The Raptors believe Collin Murray-Boyles was the best player available at 9, and it's time to dive deep into why.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's your favorite part of the day. Thanks for making Locked On Raptors your first listen every day. I'm Vivek Jacob. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors for 8 seasons across several outlets. You can follow Locked On Raptors on X, Instagram, and YouTube. And be sure to check out the Locked On Raptors Discord, where you can talk all things basketball, but especially the Raptors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It is Tuesday, July 1st. Happy Canada Day. I am joined by the face of Raptors Republic. He was on an absolute heater with basketball, she wrote, alongside Caitlin Cooper. It is the one and only Samson Folk. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. It was a fun playoff season. The Raptors have given me a bit of a reprieve, a few seasons in a row now. So I did some Pacers coverage with Caitlin. Obviously, she's the best in the world at what she does. So had fun with that. It was, again, it's Grady and then Mobo and Shamshay and CMB. I keep saying, I think it's these guys without being predictive. And then all of a sudden it is. And here we are with another draft pick on the Raptors that I like. So we cross your fingers for the reputation.
And that's exactly why I wanted to bring you on, because I think we can get into a fun discussion covering both sides of CMB, where I liked watching CMB's tape. I liked him as a prospect. Obviously, defensively, he just jumps off the page. Yeah. I did not personally see him with the Raptors as the best landing spot. And so we can get into that. For me, I had Malawach, Bryant, and Sorber all higher on my board. We know the Raptors like to take the best talent, the best player available. And so obviously they believed that Collin Murray-Boyles was better than those three guys. So why don't we start there? What to you makes CMB better than those three guys?
Well, I think in his rookie season, he'll probably be the best of those guys. And, fit is definitely a big, all of the best draft analysts, or I guess most popular, because best is kind of opaque, but all the most popular draft analysts were talking about how important they thought fit was for CMB. And I do think it is, but if you are doing best player available, you just got to go for the talent. And if you are looking at CMB and trying to categorize who is the best here, and if my ranking of those guys probably would have been CMB, Carter, Malawach, Sorber, but it's because he actually has a wide range of things that he can do offensively. He is in argument with Cooper Flagg as the best defensive prospect in the class. And I think he has relatively elite touch. And while there's not markers in his statistical profile that say, hey, this guy will shoot the ball, if you were somebody who watched his hook shots, his finishing at the rim, not terrible free throw numbers, and you say this guy can probably figure out how to get the ball in the basket at some point. He's an elite isolation player. He's an elite defender. He runs a lot of the stuff that we liked about Mobo out of San Francisco State, only he did it in the SEC at South Carolina. He drove offense.
Just for before you go on, SEC, for the people who don't realize, extremely difficult conference. That's the reference Samson is making.
Yes, good point. And just to that is he was in a very difficult position at South Carolina. It was difficult spacing. He was asked to create above the break a bunch, and he did all the garbage man stuff while also doing some of the more prototypical forward creation stuff. So I know his limited jump shot does make people kind of leery about all that kind of stuff, but the comps to, I guess, offensively limited wings of the past, I understand the urge, but he was actually a very expansive offensive player for South Carolina. So that's all that combination makes him number one for, I guess, the Raptors and for me at the time.
Yeah, I think when I look at who's the most NBA ready, and if I were to kind of power rank those guys, then CMB is above, I'd say, a Sorber, above a Malawach, and I think there's maybe a debate to be had over a Carter Bryant and him, because I think those two clearly have the most NBA ready bodies.
Hmm.
And then when I look at the skill set, uh, I can definitely see more to CMB's game on ball. Obviously, I think Bryant is going to come into the league and, he's just going to get catch and shoot opportunities and then just defend his ass off. I think with CMB, as you said, there is, that level of reading the game to him when he's got the ball in his hands, when he's off ball, when he's also just able to just spot cutters and identify gaps in the defense. So I think those are positive traits. Where I would, start to ask questions is, as you mentioned, the jump shot.
Hmm.
I think that's going to have to come a long way at the NBA level. I think that's going to have to come a long way uh, next to a guy like Scotty Barnes. And I think that uh, with the way he plays the game, I think there's a lot going left. I think he is going to be challenged at this level, going the other way. And then we'll have to see how that finishing materializes. He has really nice touch. That's obviously something that the Raptors really liked about him. That's part of why he's a bit of an analytics darling.
Hmm.
And I think that the other aspect that we'll see over time is, you know, some of those bully ball drives that he has, you know, how much of a bully ball effect is there going up against NBA bodies?
Hmm. I mean, with that stuff, I think like Scotty Barnes is a good example of that. That Scotty Barnes, his physicality was so good at the collegiate level that it translated immediately to the NBA level, and we saw it mostly manifest in cross matches and transition. And it was just kind of why Scotty has his efficiency has dipped the longer he's gone on is because of it's not about him falling off. It's about matchups, right? And CMB coming onto this, there's going to be Brandon Ingram, there's going to be Scotty Barnes. Now, I don't know if he's going to benefit them that much early on, but they will benefit him. So when it comes to CMB, like a guard standing in on him, the bully drives will be there very easily. It's like 240 pounds. His agility tests were very similar to Carter Bryant's and Cooper Flagg's. He has huge hands. He's very burly. He's very strong. He has elite touch, and he can keep control of the ball. He can bully guards on cross matches. He's way too quick for most bigs. So that aspect of his driving game, I think he'll be able to get loose. What you point out is a really good, like subtle aspect of his driving. A lot of it goes left. There isn't that much east-west motion in his drives too, so he'll have to deviate from his desired path, and he'll have to be more of a playmaker. But you draft a guy like that, expecting his talent to shine through, and these are unknowns. But the driving aspect, I think, will show up and will be a huge part of his game. But the shooting, as you say, like the guide hand creeps in on the shot a lot of the time. There's a big hitch near his hip. It's a low pickup point. Like there's a lot of things that are murky and messy in his jumper, a lot of points of failure, and he has to clean all that up. And I know he's been working on it, but I mean, it does have to happen. And the Raptors fans, I understand why they're like, because we've heard a lot about shooting projects in the past that maybe didn't pan out.
Yeah, but obviously they continue to believe in it, and
Hmm.
they believe this is the guy. One of the things that I do feel will be fun is him coming off the bench and those minutes when he's on the floor with Jacoby Walter, with Jamal Shed. Um, obviously the toughness, like you could just see if he and Jamal Shed are involved in a pick and roll and having to defend that's going to be so fun to watch.
Hmm.
We'll get to the Scotty side of it on the next segment.
Yeah.
But I also think offensively, when he's got the ball and he's got players like Jacoby Walter cutting for him, Ochai Abaji, obviously we know is a very good cutter, Grady Dick flying around. I think that's where we'll see the passing chops kind of heightened. How much he gets to do on ball is going to be a big question in his
Yeah.
rookie season. And it might just be a case where, hey, as you said, he showed that he can do a lot of the garbage stuff. He showed that he can do some of the bigger, more noticeable, star quality stuff. And so I think in his first season, it's more likely that he is asked to do more of the garbage stuff. And it's like, hey, show us you can do this. And then if you can tick those boxes, we'll give you more. And so I think that's where you're going to have to, maybe be involved in screening handoffs up top, roll to the basket, roll hard, screen hard, get on the offensive glass, get your putbacks that way. And then obviously defensively, he's going to come in expected to hold his own. And then it's going to be, hey, how much can you actually like blow up on the opposing side?
I actually think the Jacoby and Grady part is a really good aspect of his fit on the team, because Jacoby was a guy who basically like had next to zero blow-bys on the season without a screen, without a closeout. Jacoby has a very limited dribble for his size, his style of player. So he wasn't able to manipulate and beat guys off the bounce. So he needs screens, and they need a second unit screen setter or dynamic playmaker who can kind of be a facsimile of Jakob. And also Grady needs all that kind of stuff too. CMB's fit with those two guys should be really, really interesting. But the defense, as you say, it's why I loved his film against Jeremiah Fears, because Jeremiah Fears is, for most people, the most dynamic guard outside of Dylan Harper in the class, or I guess VJ to some degree. And we're looking at guys who are able to get wide, get slick, get middle all the time. And CMB at the level of the screen, he was shutting Fears down, creating turnovers, just locking down the offense. And that tape was really impressive. Same with his tape against Asa Newell guarding up. And he just put a masterclass of defensive tape on the court repeatedly and did it in a wide variety of situations, as a help side defender, as a guy at the point of attack, as a switch defender, as a guy at the nail. It was just, everything was really good and really strong. And that's where most of his talent is. Now, of course, this offensive stuff can come around, but the defense is what he leads with, and probably what the Raptors expect to see a lot of early on.
That's going to lead perfectly into what we're going to talk about next, the defensive fit next to Scotty. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we are right back at it with Samson, folk. Now, looking at the defensive side of the ball, one of the things that intrigues us, I assume intrigues the Raptors a lot, is the defensive fit next to Scotty Barnes moving forward. From what I've seen of the tape, I think they will really excel at the 4-5, really excel at the 3-4. I think their ability, I think both of them on the back end, you just highlighted, what he was able to do against Asa Newell. I think both of them have excellent skills on the back end. We've seen Scotty emerge and develop in terms of defending the perimeter. And I think if they are playing the 3-4 right now, it'd probably be Scotty that takes, the quicker matchup, if you will. Whereas, you can maybe get CMB in that back end role where he's comfortable. Is that how you see it right now?
I think ultimately probably the one that would be hardest to do immediately would be the one that features Scotty up top, because that's a harder role. But I think that CMB is a quicker player, has quicker feet, slides quicker, is better checking guys like in that immediate. And Scotty is just way bigger to roam, and Scotty covers more ground with his big strides and his ability to read the floor as the back end guy. I think ultimately that's the highest outcome right there. But it's, asking CMB to be like a point of attack guy repeatedly all the time against big time checks. I don't know if they'll give him that right away. I mean, Scotty has had his own journey to his different variant roles. Jonathan Mobo is maybe a decent example because Jonathan Mobo was one of, by the stats, like I think he was the 4th best points per possession switch defender. So if you want to say top 10 and leave yourself some room for error, great. I think CMB will function very similarly defensively in that he'll step up into a lot of screens. He'll blanket and apply a lot of pressure towards the top of the floor and support the guards that are playing really aggressive, high pickup point defense. That's my expectation. And he and Scotty, I'm sure they'll have to navigate some pre-switching stuff sometimes. I'm sure they'll blitz together at times, but I think they won't be super rigid in what they ask of one another. They'll probably they'll both get a lot of reps in each role. They'll both be extremely disruptive, whether it's, off ball at the backline roamer or at the nail. I think CMB is better at the nail than Scotty is probably. And I think that Scotty is probably a lot better towards the bucket than CMB is. But I think it being fluid is more of an advantage. And they want to collect data on this. They want to see how it works. So they're probably going to give him a chance to do a lot of stuff. And he and Scotty, I mean, imagine it's late in game and there's like a Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero situation that they're like, we shred teams with this. But against the Raptors, it's not so easy.
Yeah. So
provided CMB even plays late. I mean,
yeah, he's going to have to get there first.
Yeah.
So I think this is another interesting point of difference where, in terms of guarding up, I think you mentioned the Jeremiah Fears tape. I also watched film where he did get blown by going up against other guards. And, I think even, on the blow by, as he tries to catch up, he's not able to get there. And I think that aspect of it, at the NBA level is something you probably want to ease him into. And obviously long term, you believe that he'll be able to get to that level. But I do think if I were to look at the positions he should come in ready to defend, it's obviously the 4 and then the 3. And then I'd probably look at the 5 before I look at 2s and 1s. And I think that's, again, that just might be, a different viewpoint where I feel like he's actually going to need time to develop defending the guards in this league.
Yeah, I think early, if he, and again, like it could very well be that they don't want to put him in that position, but just veer back switching, I think is a real advantage of what he does. You can see it in game all the time where it's like, if he gets the blow by with his active hands in the lane, he starts transitioning to the big down low. If he is out there with Scotty, that's like an easy step up switch in the lane or something like that, or Mobo or whoever. But I think you make a really good point because everyone says 1 through 5. I'm really big CMB guy. He's not 1 through 5. And when I'm talking about him like stepping out on Fears, it's mostly like as an at the level screener. It's not like I'm the guy who steps out and takes matchups and like shuts everything down. He's not. I mean, how many bigs or even forwards are quick enough for all that? It's so difficult. But you bring up it's a limitation for sure, and something they have to get used to with his game and find out kind of where it is.
And this all just comes back to like best player available, fit. Like I think people confuse, when someone says, hey, you have to consider the fit, they're not saying, oh, the Raptors need a center, let's only list all the center prospects. Sure. And we're not looking at anyone else. Yeah. We're saying, hey, if you have 2 players who are in the same tier or you consider in the same tier talent wise, then you pick the fit.
Sure.
And I think, one of the most important discussions when it comes to rookies and just picking at the draft is, guess what? 4 years, 5 years down the line, how many times do we see rookies that came in and it's like, oh, they couldn't quite figure it out, but it's like, oh, now they get to a new situation where it is a better fit and it is more conducive to the skills that they offer. And now you see them showcase what they really can bring to the table. And that's where I think, I was looking at the draft and I was like, man, if CMB drops to OKC at 15, heck, even, San Antonio 14, yeah, Houston, like I was like, man, he would love that. And I think that would have really, really brought out the best in him. Houston, I will say I wasn't as great about in terms of fit, again, because of, the spacing around. Obviously, these were thoughts prior to the Kevin Durant trade. Kevin Durant changes everything about how you view spacing on the floor of your team. But I think that's going to be just an interesting part of how this plays out. I know, when you did the second round live and Blake had asked you about, you know, does which team picking a player impact what you think of that player? And so to see, San Antonio take Bryant at 14, to see OKC take Sorber at 15, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the next 3-4 years for these guys plays out.
Yeah, well, definitely. And like the thing too is with fit, and the reason why I don't worry so much about it is, Trey and we did this podcast last year where we're like, these are gettable wings and gettable players. And it was a list of like 12 players. And I think 10 of those guys in a year have been traded. And Ochai Agbaji is not guaranteed to be a Raptor for a long time, even though he just had the season he had. Jacoby Walter and Grady this next season, I don't think that there's going to be a choice here, but there will be a choice down the road more than likely. Brandon Ingram has his contract, but the Raptors have been building to pivot at some point, to find another path and walk it. If you believe that CMB is a tremendous player and you believe that he doesn't fit that well in a place without that much shooting, then it's just as fine to say, well, Scotty Barnes is entering year 5. We want him to be a shooter. Well, Grady Dick was drafted as a shooter. We want him to shoot. Emmanuel Quickley doesn't shoot enough threes. Why doesn't he shoot more? Shoot more. And say that, CMB is a tremendously talented player. We're not picking him so he can shore up our weakness, because that rookies just don't do that. We're picking him because we think he's one of the best players in the class, and we want our team to develop so that it can house a truly unique and dynamic player like CMB, who definitely has a limited jumper. We'll see where that goes. I think that's more so. Teams change and pivot so much now that just get the talent in. And if they have to pivot away from CMB in 3 years, then I guess that. But that's fit is a big time moving target in the NBA. And I think people think of it more in like a stasis thing.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point you've made, where with CMB coming in now, a lot of people are harping on the jumper. I would say, hey, you've taken this kid now. Let him feel at home on the court. Don't try to turn him into like this guy who now has to take 3 to 5 threes a game.
That would be funny.
Or else the fit isn't going to work, Let him be at home. Let him bring his primary skill sets to the table, and then you work your way from there, right? And I think that's something that is another important aspect, right? Like I just talked about, hey, like you want to see the skills that a new player brings to the table, like create that environment around him where he can do that. And I do think that, when he's next to Jacoby and Grady and Jamal Shed, and if Ochai is on the court, like I think that's going to be very conducive to him just doing what he does.
Well, can I ask you something quick? I know you did a lot of work covering the draft this year. So I actually like CMB as a player with the jumper. You've probably told the audience how you feel, but I'd like to hear, where's your confidence rating in him right now and the jumper coming along?
Specifically with the jumper, I think it's to use an old to use a famous line, it's 2 years away from being 2 years away. Nice. Like I would not expect anything to come along in the next couple of years at the very least. I think you mentioned the guide hand. It feels almost like just entirely too close to his shooting hand, and I think
crossfires all the time.
Weirdly, yeah, and I think weirdly enough, there's times when he's closer to the left baseline, and because he's a lefty, he almost gets a bit of separation because he's lining up a bit more directly to the basket. And I think it's when he's kind of like straight on and whatnot, that's when he's kind of just like a bit upright, and I think that really messes up the funk. Now, I'm no shot doctor. That's my very basic
Yeah.
understanding of what I've seen with his shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think, again, like in terms of just building out, and I've said the same thing about Scotty, like with someone who doesn't have a jumper but has the skills that he has, like focus on the mid range first. Everyone gets caught up in the threes. Like if you're thinking about the jumper, develop like a decent 10-footer, 15-footer, and then you can steadily work your way back.
That was Pascal Siakam's route. Like it wasn't talked about, but when Pascal was drafted, he was one of the highest volume mid-range shooters out of New Mexico, and then he tried to get to threes and obviously went really poorly for a time, but it came around eventually. And Pascal had unbelievable touch. It was like when that championship run that season, it felt like any time he just threw it at the basket, it would just magnet.
Yeah, it was. I mean, nothing is gonna beat, game one of the NBA Finals. Like, every single drive was just, it was crazy, and he's doing this to Draymond Green.
Yeah,
like,
incredible.
Yeah. All right, final segment coming up next. Was Collin Murray-Boyles Masai's guy? Here to wrap it up, and we are going to get into a Mark Stein report that Collin Murray-Boyles was believed to be Masai Ujiri's guy, and it raised some eyebrows when the Raptors went ahead with Collin Murray-Boyles on what might be transpiring in the Raptors landscape. I think, there's definitely that possibility where Masai understands that, hey, even if I like this guy, this is a team that is now going to be at least, in the near term under the stewardship of Bobby. And if there's a preference on their side to take, who they believe is the better player, then by all means go with that. Just quickly, when you looked at Murray-Boyles, what did you see of him? Obviously, again, there's the defensive upside. What did you see of him that maybe would have made him Masai's guy?
I mean, he has size, and he can't teach size at all. And, Trey described him as a too big to fail prospect. And I think that is true a lot of the time. But the thing is like a lot of the too big to fail prospects are too big to fail for their own careers. Like they'll always get a chance, they'll always get paid, but that doesn't mean they can't fail for a team. There's actually a lot more downside. Like Murray-Boyles will be in the league for years, I presume. And I really hope he figures it out. I thought his feet were like much slower than people thought. However, his catch radius is like the craziest ever. He can go up and get a ball. While his feet aren't quick, once he loads up and starts covering ground, his stride length is insane. He can just blanket the court at times. And when that type of size is mobile and going and shows at least like the commensurate amount of coordination needed, then you start looking at like this guy can kind of, if it just goes okay, maybe you're looking at like around all-star impact, even if he never gets selected. Just a good big man in the NBA, which is tough to find, on cost-controlled contracts. So that's the big motivation there. But again, like I was covering a finals run. I heard nothing this year. I didn't have my ear to the ground for anything Raptors side. So I don't know if Masai liked it. If Mark Stein says so, sure. I mean, but I have no clue.
Yeah. So, I think when we look at this team now, moving forward, obviously the president is the biggest hole that needs to be addressed. There's a roster spot available for those, who need a bit of an update. Garrett Temple has been re-signed. He will be back, bringing his leadership, bringing his experience. And, we'll see how much.
He's probably so jazzed Garrett, because you could tell like he and the Raptors probably were having that conversation where they're like, "We'd love you as an assistant coach," and he's like, "Players get paid $3.6 million this year. I would
Yep.
love to be a player." And he won. So like, hell yeah, Garrett.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as much as the Raptors would have loved to just transition him to a member of the staff at the end of the
Mhm.
day, like for a veteran's minimum in terms of what you're getting back, Garrett, like he's becoming a part of the furniture now, and I think if you do see long-term potential with the franchise, uh, then kicking the can down the road for
Yeah.
another year, it just makes a lot of sense. One roster spot remaining. With Grange threw out the idea that Ben Simmons is a name to look out for.
Sure. Oh, sure. If people were
We'll
worried
see.
about the CMB, Mobo, Scotty aspect, throwing Ben Simmons in there is hilarious, man.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, okay. uh, and yeah, I think just coming back to the number 9 of it all, the Raptors were pretty openly shopping the number 9 pick, and
Oh, I thought you were
it
talking
seemed
about
like
RJ.
well, that was the offer, number 9 and number 9. So obviously they couldn't come away with what they really wanted. They weren't willing to give up Jakob Poeltl in a potential deal for Durant. They weren't. They were not going to give up the pick package that was required to get Desmond Bane, and it would have taken something similar at the very least to get Derek White. And so ultimately, you end up having to pick. You've gone with Collin Murray-Boyles. How do you feel about the vision of this team overall as it stands?
It is a little bit muddied, but we see this happen all the time. Like you and I were talking before we recorded about the expectation now of Atlanta to be like this level of team because there's an expectation of certain performances now. But as we see, performances are not static across years, and performances can come out of nowhere. I just covered the Pacers finals run. Like, remember the Oladipo Sabonis year? That was just like,
Yep.
oh, what the hell? The Raptors haven't had a what the hell development performance in a long time. It's been a long time. They have a bunch of new talent on the team, a bunch of young talent on the team, good teams and good drafting teams. This is about the time where guys start popping. And guys who pop change the trajectory of teams. And the Raptors have put themselves in a position, whether it's Brandon Ingram in a new place, whether it's one of their young guards in Jacoby or Grady stepping into like a really strong role player at this point, maybe even a starter, Scotty Barnes, all NBA leap, all-star return, something like that. They the Raptors are the team that probably has the widest spread of like predictions. And it's because you are expecting pop, and some people do and some people don't. I think it's an exciting place to be. And I think I would expect progression in some places for sure. And there's a lot of talent on the team now to be outside of the play-in. I'd expect them to be in the picture at the very least. I know last year people were like, well, they'll be a top 6 seed. And I was like, wow, Jesus, I don't know, man. We'll see. But this year, it's not as wild a prediction.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Achilles injuries have changed the dynamic of the East.
Mhm.
I do think that there's a pretty clear top 4. You've got Cleveland will be right back at it. The New York Knicks will be there. Um, Orlando is on the ascendancy.
Yeah, they should be good.
Yeah, they should be good. And then Philly's just like this big wild card. Like it's so quiet on Embiid that I'm just like,
Yeah, no kidding, man. I haven't thought about Philly in so long, but they have so much talent on their team.
they do,
Yeah.
but so uh, that 4 to 6 range, I feel like could be anyone. And like you said, at the very least, the Raptors should be a play-in team.
Yeah. And even without Dame, I mean, Giannis should put the Bucks somewhere, provided he's there. You know,
Provided he's
so
there. Yeah, yeah.
he can
Rook
be on
is
the
a loss,
Raptors
though.
if he wants. You know.
Yeah, I think the dreams of that just came
Yeah.
crashing down a few days ago.
For what reason? Who knows?
And you know, I'll just leave it at this. Like, that was more almost like a statement of, even if that were to be an option, it's not one we're taking. You know, and that's not what the ownership envisions for this team moving forward. Which is a bit of a punch to the gut.
Yeah. At least Magic got
Just a bit.
LeBron to LA before he dipped. You know, he put in all the legwork, and they was like, you know, I'm not gonna be here. And things happened.
Yeah, yeah. All right. I think that just about wraps it up for this episode. If you want to carry on our discussion, head on over to the Locked On Raptors Discord. Link is in the description. Samson, why don't you let the people know where they can find your work?
Just Raptors Republic. We do a lot of work out there. Myself and Trey will be doing work from Vegas, probably some crossover stuff with Alex and Will and Jerome and something like that, I think. So Vegas should be fun. There should be lots of good work coming out of there. Hopefully I can bother the Raptors PR enough to give me a few nice one-on-ones. We'll see how that goes.
I wish you luck with that, buddy. Thank you for making Locked On Raptors your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast, where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.